You're listening to the GC Collaborative Podcast, a resource for the worship arts team at Grace Church.
Hey everybody, welcome to the GC Collaborative Podcast. My name is Luke Lauber, and I'll be hosting this podcast today with Chris Anderson.
The one and only. Actually, it's a very common name. There's probably a lot of Chris Andersons out there.
I have a phone book, actually. I just looked to see if you were the only one in Kansas City, and there's at least 60 other Chris Andersons.
Why'd you do that?
I don't even know if phone books still exist, honestly.
Yeah, right?
I don't know. I don't have a house. Do they deliver them to your house still? I remember younger.
No, I don't think they do. I don't think that's a thing anymore, Luke.
Oh, man. Anyways, we are so excited that you're here with us. April 1st, it is April Fool's Day, so hopefully you're playing a few pranks on some friends and having a good time.
Healthy pranks.
Yeah, don't take it too far.
Yeah.
We all know what that's like.
We've never done that. Though,
we've never taken pranks too far. You're so right. But anyways, today we're just so excited. As you know, Easter is right around the corner. This is April 1st, 2023. Easter is on April 9th. And so as we were talking about the podcast this time, we said, what would be just something we could talk about in the arts? And we realized that we have a film that's opening Easter this year, and we have an element that we're kind of introducing again. It's been there a little bit, but kind of reintroducing, and that is dance in the film. And so we thought it'd be awesome to talk about that, talk about just kind of the behind the scenes of the film, the heart of the film, and also bring in the dancer who's dancing in it, Renee, and interview her as well and talk with her and just kind of give you guys the heart behind it, especially you guys who are at the campuses and worshiping with it and playing with it, just to kind of know like, hey, this is the desire behind it and what we're going for, and then to hear her heart for dance as well.
Huge.
And Chris is here with me today, which I'm so excited about. And we're just going to have a blast. Renee's awesome. You guys are going to love her. Just tons of experience in the dance world and just a huge heart for Christ. Yeah. And when you mix those two things together, it's pretty powerful.
Beautiful things happen.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
All right. Well, join us, and here we go.
Let's go.
All right, everybody, welcome to this month's GC Collaborative Podcast. As we talked about in the intro, we are talking to Renee today, who is a beautiful, do you say dancer, or is it some other word, or is it just
dancer?
Dance? Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure. And we got Chris Anderson with us today, our film director at Grace. And we thought it'd just be really cool. Easter is coming up on April 9th, and we are just super excited about it. And one of the things we have for Easter this year is a film that features Renee dancing. And so we thought it'd be really cool to just sit down, have a conversation with Renee, talk about the video so you guys kind of understand the behind the scenes, the background of it, the heart of it, especially for the members who are playing for Easter, kind of understanding the vision and the hope and the desire, but also taking the time to talk about dance, which is a really beautiful, important aspect of art and creation that God's given us. And so we just thought it'd be awesome to bring Renee in. And she's been so gracious to come in and talk to us, and I think we're gonna learn a lot, because every time I sit with Renee, I'm always like, oh wow, like I did not realize that.
Didn't know that.
Yes, so we're very excited.
I charge about $3.50 per minute, so
$3.50.
No,
Oh,
$3.50. I'm worth more than
$3.
Well, welcome to the shortest podcast.
Exactly. There you have it, folks. Have a great one.
It's been fun.
That's right.
Happy Easter.
Yeah, just kidding. But Chris, I do want to start with you of just kind of the behind the scenes of the film to start Easter, just kind of where it came from, the thought, because I know Renee came in later with the dance side of it. Just kind of wanted to start with the initial creation of it.
Yeah. So I'll start with Christmas. Actually, it's always, Easter's always a little bit more difficult than Christmas at times, because you're coming off of the heels of Christmas, where you usually have productions, things that you're doing, busyness, that kind of thing. And then depending on when Easter falls, which this year is a little bit earlier, it kind
Next
of
year it's March 31st. Just so you know.
Thank you for that anxiety. Yeah,
not to stress you out.
No, not at all.
Oh my gosh!
So you have a little bit of a quick turnaround. So you got to catch your breath, right? In January, a little bit. You catch your breath, but you start thinking, okay, Easter's coming up. We want to do something special. And I give the caveat. This is huge. If God puts it on our heart, something special, something that He wants to convey, right? Mm-hmm. And so we started praying through it and just processing as a team, as we usually do, and just thinking, man, what can we do? And so Renee, a little background is she's been coming. How long have you been coming to Grace, Renee?
It's been about 2 years, two and a half.
And she's been kind of waiting in the wings. She approached Luke saying, man, I dance. I would love to utilize my giftings, my passions for Grace Church, however that might look. And so we've tried in the past and we've tried to do different things. And finally we were like, man, what if we did something special this year for Easter and incorporated dance, something that, and so the thought process behind is we wanted something really multi-layered, something that somebody can watch, and it opens Easter with excitement because why? Easter is exciting. Jesus has risen. And so we wanted something exciting. And so there's this artist and this song that we've kind of been keeping in our hip pocket for quite a while now. And I approached Luke and I said, well, what do you think about this? And we started brainstorming, me, Luke, Cody, the team. And we started just getting these ideas together. We started throwing things on a wall is the idea. And dance was kind of the central focus of this. And the thing about anytime you introduce something that's different that you haven't done in a while, at least, is
let's back up a second, because this is always the fun part of creativity is we're starting to build this idea around dance, and we haven't even talked to Renee yet.
Yes, exactly. So Renee's not even in the process yet,
nor any other dancer. So we're just making this idea and concept and video out of the idea that we will have a dancer at some point, which we have no idea.
And so we're literally coming up with these ideas and finalizing what we're thinking. So what we do is we come up with this concept of balancing out something relatively new as dance, as an element of creativity that some people might watch and say, I don't understand. That's foreign to me.
By new, we just mean it like Grace Church.
Correct.
We haven't dove into it.
Yes, at Grace Church specifically, right? And so we wanted to balance that with a voiceover, so a story that kind of guides you through as you're watching this beautiful dance unfold. So I kid you not, it's probably, so we're in, I think it was February, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong, but I believe it was February, and it was the week before we were even supposed to present to the decision makers, the campus pastors, all the people that go into all this stuff. And I talked to Luke and I'm like, at some point we should probably pull Renee into this. And so I text Renee and I said,
she's so expensive for every hour.
Exactly. I'm like, I gotta get her
every minute, I guess.
Right. And so I call Renee and we talk for probably about 30 minutes. And it's one of those things for me, and Renee, you can definitely speak into this conversation. I was so, it's like, it felt a little like the ugly baby kind of thing, right? Where it's like, okay, you've got something that's, is beautiful, but it's like, it's not quite fleshed out and it's not quite where you want it to be. So that's where I was in the process. And so I tell Renee, I'm like, so I have this idea. We have this idea. And it's dancing, and it's a representation as the dancer of the Holy Spirit. And you come down, and we're talking about having an aerialist included. And can you do this, Renee? And I'm asking all these questions, and Renee's just processing and listening. And you can speak into this anytime, Renee, and what your thoughts behind it. First glance at when I first talked to you about it.
Oh, I was so stoked because your enthusiasm and excitement was so contagious, and the creativity that was exuding from you was like a big explosion. And, I hadn't really had a chance to dance at the church. And so I I was just incredibly excited. But I wanted to make sure that God was okay with me dancing, or if he had somebody else. And so instead of saying, yeah, I'm on board, I'm like, okay, I got to pray about this.
And that was huge. I'll say that was something that really stuck out to me, is that a lot of times when you go to people and say, hey, you want to be, and it's just an instant, yes, let's do it. Something I really appreciated is that you did take the time to say, well, Chris, I love the idea. I'm super excited. If you can just give me a few days, let me pray through it and see if I'm the person. You said, I'd love to be involved, but I don't know if it's me that's the dancer, and we can have that dialogue. And so,
I do think, like that's a huge, and I think that's one thing I really love about you, Renee, is even in waiting to dance, because I think we had the conversation like 2 years ago, because we talked pretty close to when you got to Grace. And I remember us talking, and I think I said, like, we haven't really dove too much into this area yet, but like we want to. And so if you stay patient, which who knew how long patient meant?
Subjective.
Yeah, we'd like to start, and I really do. I admire you in that, because I know a lot of artists who would be like, well, the church isn't using my skill, and you have every right to. I'm going to go somewhere else that will, and so just your patience and I'm sure there's frustration in that, obviously, because I know I would be, and so just your patience in that, and I think just your willingness to listen to the Lord in that. I say this with full confidence, in that we probably wouldn't have been able to do this without you being so patient and waiting.
Inflexible,
yeah. And so I think and then to his point, after all that time, it's like, hey, we need a dancer. And your first response is, because you've been waiting for 2 years, not, oh, thank God, finally it's my chance. It's the, okay, let me pray about it and see if, and that's huge. That shows what God's been doing in your heart, just through your life. And I think that's a huge testimony of who he's creating you to be, as an artist, because that's not the case for a lot of people, and probably for me too, honestly. I don't know if I would have had that response. And so it's a very humble heart that the Lord's been working in you, and it's cool to see, not only in that, but just also in the way you dance and the expression of dance. So
well, thanks. I think part of it is, our fleshy nature tends to be narcissistic. And then narcissism can rule our hearts, especially in the entertainment field, and I wanted to be really careful about that. And so God used that time to, do more work in my heart. So
that's so cool.
And a throwback, you actually did, for those who came to it or saw it, at South Overland Park, we did a Good Friday service, and you were behind. We did a service that was all shadows, and you were behind a lot of that, and the acting side of it, and all of that, and that was beautiful.
It was incredible.
And so yes, you were the mind behind that. And I remember even in that one, we were like, a service of shadows.
What is this lady thinking?
It was beautiful, yeah. And I mean, I think it was a very powerful. So that's a little bit of a throwback.
No, that's good. And so she came back a few days and said, you know what? I'd love to continue the dialogue of, like, if it's me to dance, then I'm open to that. But if you guys have someone else in mind, but you said, I'd be happy to be a part. And that was our heart, is like, we wanted you to be a part somehow, right? And whether it was you're the dancer and you're developing the dance and you are, executing the dance, or that could be you're coaching somebody and working in collaboration with someone and so it was so fun. I was literally talking to Luke the other day about this. My favorite part of these projects, I just have to say this, it's never the end result. It's always the process behind it. It's the people that we get to work with and come alongside with, going shoulder to shoulder with. And we come across quite a few hiccups, roadblocks, that kind of thing. And to have people that have your back and you have their back, and to walk through some of those things with them, that's, for me, my favorite part. And so it was just incredibly, it was such a blessing to my heart being able to work with you in that project. And I do think it was a huge success, and throughout all the when we'll get into this in a minute, some oh no moments that we definitely had, right? But you know, but it was just awesome just seeing your heart through that process. So I don't want that to go unseen or unheard. So we got it approved.
And just her kindness, because anytime we dive into a new field, we are clueless, and we try to let people know, like, we don't know a lot about what you need or what needs to happen. And so I think we try to let people know, like, you're kind of our first child, for lack of better words, in this field. So we're going to need a lot of help and understanding, and you helped us. I mean, even with having to dance on carpet, to us, it was like, oh, you're just dancing on carpet. And you're like, that's kind of a big change.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal.
Slightly.
Yeah. So we're like, really?
Didn't know that.
Yeah, you're telling me a soft, flat surface is different. But yeah, just I think there's a lot of unknowns that we always run into in anything we do, and even. You know, we were talking about this earlier, 5 years ago, working with a spoken word artist. Like, there were things in that we were like, oh, yeah. So it always takes a lot of patience to work sometimes.
It's so true. On all parts.
Yeah.
Really.
One of my favorite memories with Luke is when I first came to him about 2.5 years ago. And he said, so Renee, you know, what are your thoughts? What kind of vision do you have? And I was coming up with these grandiose things like, and then we could have animals for this, and we could have this and that. And Luke's face, and he was engaged at the time, so he was planning a wedding, and there was COVID, and his whole face, he just looked like,
Yeah.
So I kid with him.
But we take baby steps. So.
That's right.
Yes. He kept saying to me, keep it simple.
Yeah.
Giraffes
Keep
and
it
elephants.
simple.
Hey, you never know. You never know in the years to
Noah's
come.
Ark.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
you never
right.
know.
Coming Easter 2024.
Oh, God.
That was not a promise. That was a joke. That was a joke. So,
March 31st.
Here we go. Foreshadowing.
We'll show you.
He's been good at tempering me.
Well, and it takes both, right? And so I think that's a quick side note is, for me, like, I used to be the dreamer, and you know, and I have, and still to this day, have the people above me to kind of tamper down and say, okay, what's possible? And so then to be in that role, all of a sudden with people is like, oh, wow, now I've got to be the person that's like, okay, I love the dreams, and, you know, let's eventually one day, like, yes, but like, what's doable, like where we're at now. It was a weird situation in that, and even in that year of just working with artists and stuff of, oh, wow, like I love the big dreams, and like, let's always dream big, because why not? But in that, how do we also be like, this is where we're at now as a church, as a community. And so it's been fun to walk alongside you in that, and continue to learn.
Yeah. So we developed a screenplay. We pitched it to a lot of the decision makers and the higher ups that play a role in making Easter successful at Grace Church, and we got the thumbs up. So we're like, okay, let's do this. And there's always some pressure when that happens. I don't know if you feel it, but it's like, okay, like,
oh, it's what did we get ourselves into?
Yeah, it's like, all right, well, they gave us.
You make these promises, and you're like, well, can we make these promises?
Let's see if we better follow through. If we want to do this again.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So there's a little pressure in that, and I'm only half joking, but there is. But and so we get it approved, and we literally have, and correct me if I'm wrong, probably 3 to 3.5 weeks between the time it gets approved to when we're actually rehearsing, filming, capturing, and all that whole process. And it might sound like a lot to some people, but that's not a lot of time at all.
Well, and we're also trying to get it done early enough to where, you know, we can make corrections. We can send it to people to
feedback.
watch, campuses, all kinds of stuff. So we put the deadline as, I think, in the middle of March, which is a month before Easter, but that's the deadline on our side of things.
Exactly. So we told Renee, hey, I remember we all met. It was Luke, Renee, and then Cammie, who's another amazing artist here at Grace Church, and I met, and we started talking through more, fleshing out the vision, walking you guys through the screenplay, and said, okay. And Renee, you said, hey, I prayed about it. I really feel like the Lord is putting on my heart that I can do this, that I'd love to be the dancer. And we said, yeah.
Which, side note, I never told you this, but Chris was actually really upset in that conversation because he wanted to be the dancer. He was like, God, pick
his wife
me.
told me about that.
That wasn't God. That was
So
Satan.
sorry,
Oh,
Chris.
I'm just kidding. That got dark. I'm just
Oh
kidding.
my gosh. We'll edit that out.
Yeah, edit that out.
Good
Edit that out. I'm sorry.
Get that coffee away from
I'm
that man.
kidding. I'm
Oh
kidding.
my gosh.
No. But no, seriously, I was stoked. And so I was like, let's flex our muscles a little bit. Let's collaborate as a team. And so then we had a bunch of things happen. We said Renee also works full-time, correct? I mean, mostly full-time. Yep. So she is in 3 weeks developing a dance to this full score while also working full-time, while also weekly trying to meet with the team just to keep us updated on, hey, this is what it's looking like. This is the look. This is the feel. And that's how we do all of our projects when we're working in things like this. Is like we, it can be a very dangerous thing when someone's left on an island and they're just working in silence and they're just kind of doing their own thing. And then by the time you get to the shoot date or the rehearsal date and you see it for the first time and it's like, okay, we're not on the same page, right? And so that's something I thought Renee, you did incredible on just keeping us updated, sending us videos.
Well, we never like anybody to feel like all the pressure's on them because there's so many aspects that are going and at different parts in the project. The pressure, or it's kind of the ball's thrown to that person. So there's a point where it's thrown to you. There's a point where it's thrown to Ezra on the lighting. There's a point where it's thrown to Cody to get the production to work, and which we'll talk about later, I'm sure, with the projector. It's thrown to you to edit. And so at different points, it's like it's on, quote unquote, on this person. And in that, though, it's no, we're all doing this together. And we never just want somebody to feel like if you mess up, if you don't do this correctly, it's done. Right. And it's all on you. And so it's a team thing.
That's not a great feeling for you, I'm sure. If you felt like we're just like, all right, Renee, go do it. I'm sure you wouldn't feel very good about that. You wouldn't feel very supported. You wouldn't feel very encouraged, that kind of thing. So I think hopefully going throughout that process, you did feel supported and encouraged.
Very much so. Yeah. I loved the frequency of the text. How are you doing? Are you doing all right?
Yeah.
And that's the wonderful thing about the Christian world is not that in the secular world you don't get encouragement and how are you doing, but there's a pastoral element to what you guys do, and you do it very well.
Oh, thank you.
So, my daughter works in film in New York. She's on the set of different TV series. Yeah. And I will hear the day-to-day about, how she's being either criticized or yelled at when she does something wrong. And, it's a 12-hour day. And, of course, there's higher competition and pressure. You're dealing with lots of money and different
New Yorkers, let's be honest.
those New Yorkers.
Now
we
love New Yorkers. We got to edit out a lot of your comments.
Local church, much love, man.
We're gonna love you, local church. You're not even going to be in this. You're not going to be in this podcast because we got to edit it out. I got to edit out everything you say.
I'm kidding.
But you guys did a great job. I felt very encouraged.
That's so cool. Love hearing that. And so. So there was a dance element, and then we also had, just to get 1,000 feet up a little bit, just to give you an overview of the project, is Luke was working behind the scenes really hard at getting a full kind of orchestra / band together to put to have in there as well. There was a lot of renting of different machines, things that we needed, whether we needed a fog machine, we got a projector that needed a generator to actually be able to just work.
And then it started raining that night. So then we couldn't have the generator in the building because of the gas.
We would die.
Yeah. And then we had it outside and then it started raining.
It's crazy. Yeah. So, I mean, like all sorts of things. And then there was one, this was like maybe a week or two before we were going to film. My wife and I got deathly ill, so we had, so we were just barely surviving parenting. But it was so cool seeing Luke step up and, working with Renee, working with Cammie, working with the artists and pulling. And so that's why I just go back to, man, like, it takes a village. Mm-hmm. Like, when you watch this film, you might like it, you might not, you might have different emotions, and that's honestly okay. That's part of it. But just know that it really takes a village to make this kind of thing happen. It doesn't take one person. It's impossible. And so it was just a really fun process. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Renee, tell us about just kind of the behind, like what goes through your mind when you're asked to do a dance, and then it's, okay, now I got to create this dance. Like, walk us through that a little bit. Like, what does that even look like? Like, where do you start? Is it just crying? Because that's where I usually start most creative projects, is just crying. And what did I get myself into? But yeah, just walk us through that. Because I think from what I know of it, it's really beautiful and awesome. And so just to bring people into that process.
Yeah, it's quite a roller coaster. I liken it to having a baby. Obviously you guys haven't.
You have 4, so
I do.
We'll let you speak on this. I've had none. I've never.
It's like you find out you're pregnant, and you and your husband, you and your spouse are just over the top excited. Oh, this is going to be great! And you look at all the wonderful things about having a child, and you're on this high, and you tell everybody about it, and then the reality sets in, and you're like, oh my heavens, what have I gotten myself into?
I can imagine.
And you see, all okay, this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And oh my goodness. And so then when you're creating something, for me anyways, it's not like I can schedule it perfectly and say, okay, from 2 to 4, I'm going to choreograph and finish this. Right. It might be that in those 2 hours, I just get a phrase of dance where you might get 2 measures, or you might edit just a clip.
Yeah, right.
And that's what's frustrating, especially when you're working full time.
Yeah.
But, and then you hit, when you're actually birthing the baby, you hit transition. And at the beginning, you're excited because the contractions are coming. Oh, it's coming, the baby's coming. And then there's this transition period where it's becoming more and more painful, and you're like, I'm just adopting. I don't want to do this anymore. Get me out of this, please. There's no way out,
That's hilarious.
Oh, my gosh.
And then you start to see the baby coming out, and you're like, oh, this is really happening. Oh, look at this beautiful baby. It's really happening.
Yeah.
And out it comes, and, it's just such a good feeling. And, the relief of the pain of it, of course, is there.
Sure.
And then, but then you need to raise it. So you need to make sure it's healthy and make sure its vitals are working. And so that's the way I kind of go through the process.
Wow, that's so good.
And I pray, I can't say that I pray as much as I would like to for all the moves to represent Jesus and all the vision. But I do pray, Lord, what do you want to communicate in this movement? What would the tempo be? What would the level of movement? Would it be a high jumping or a twirl or a on the floor kind of thing? And so, and then I do the musical aspects. I write counts. I write phrases. I really listen to the music over and over again so my body and my mind can get a real feel for the rhythm.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of...
Yeah.
And I upped my cardio workouts, and I went to ballet class.
You're welcome.
Oh my heavens! You better be funding that.
My God. Sounds like we are with $3.50 a minute.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's enough for 5 years of
Send
class.
that to the film department, by the way. No, that's awesome. And so, like, what's your mindset? Because we've talked about this in the past, but what's your mindset when you're thinking about the movements? Like, how are you thinking about them, going about them? And I got a few that I actually want to ask you about later that you've talked to me about. But yeah, what's kind of your process of just thinking about that? Because I know you are trying to bring Christ and the Holy Spirit through what you're doing. And so what does that look like just mindset wise while you're thinking about the
good
dance?
question. I think about what I'm trying to communicate, but I also think about how does this music or words make me feel like moving. I just kind of pace around, listen to the music, close my eyes. Okay, right here, God wants me to express joy. So I'm going to leap.
Yeah.
Or confusion, so I'm going to twirl. Or blessing the congregation or I hate to say audience because it's not really a performance, but the people watching, so I'm going to take the banner and I'm going to move in such a way that and hold the banner in such a way that I'm saying his banner over you is love, or bless you, or don't worry about this, or when I'm trying to express, the death that we go through as Christians or that Jesus went through, I might fall to the floor and grab my head.
Yeah.
Does that sort of answer?
Yeah. Well, and because the banner was one of them that I was going to ask you about, because I remember us talking about that. And because at the end of the video, you grab a banner and start circling it around. And just that idea that you just talked about of the reason you did that was because of that exact truth of his banner over us is love, and representing that, which I think is so cool, because you are taking scripture, you're taking promises, you're taking truths, and you're putting them visually into dance. And I remember even with the ribbon, we talked about, because at first you're like, yeah, I was going to bring a ribbon. And I'll be honest, I was like, a ribbon?
It's like that's what I'm wearing that. Yeah, right? I know.
Luke's a burly man.
Yeah. And but then seeing it in the representation of, at least to me, it represented, because we're talking about the Lord moving and spreading, and it's like this idea of like him just, it's the beginning of that spreading of the gospel, and the the smaller, it's smaller, but it's still moving quickly, and it's, going all around, and to then switch to this banner. Like it was really beautiful to hear your heart behind that, and to see it all come to life. And even one of my favorite moves, I'm not gonna lie, and you're just getting all kinds of spoilers if you're listening to this, but you're hopefully a part of like the band or whatever, so hopefully this will just help see. But it turns into the ending, which I always felt like had a very worldly, ethnic feel, like the nation's kind of coming together. And you go into this dance where it's like, I don't even know what you call it, but it's like you, I don't even know, but you like put your hands, nobody can see
like
this, but
Middle Eastern
Exactly.
vibe.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's called, but that's
I did a little research on Middle Eastern dancing.
Oh,
and
really?
Folk dancing.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah.
Well, I looked back at I choreographed Fiddler on the Roof, the show about the Jewish culture years ago. So I kind of remembered that. And then I just looked up videos and on folk dancing in the Middle East and even worship dancing in that sort of genre of folk dancing. And so just picked up a couple of moves.
That's awesome.
Definitely worked.
Yeah.
That's
I was like,
sure.
That was my favorite part.
Awesome.
I loved doing that,
I
just
love
the
that.
excitement.
And the energy with it. That was cool. Yeah. And so,
And I think too, the other thing that I admire just first time into a project with us, which I'm sure you gained from working with musicals and stuff, is you were very flexible with us as far as, because to some level we were figuring out stuff. So we had the song, but then we were like, we had this idea for lighting and projection and band. And so we were kind of figuring that out. And then you were figuring out the dance. And so along the way, I remember there was one point where we were like, hey, we think it'd be really cool to like slow-mo this part. So can you just put a jump?
Do you have a trampoline?
Yeah,
please?
exactly. Do you mind just
I'm not
jumping?
that young anymore.
Yeah, can you just jump so we can just slow it down? And so, but that's where too, like you were very understanding and willing to work and try things, which we are very grateful for.
Well, even the screenplay, when we first pitched it to you, we gave it to you and said, okay, this is kind of the screenplay. And then probably not even a week later, Luke and I had a conversation and we said, hey, the dance is supposed to start at 7 seconds or whatever it is into the song. But then as we were looking through the voiceover and the narration of it, we were like, does it make sense for her to come in here, or should we wait till more like, the 40-second mark, which is a huge audible for us to call. And so Luke and I was literally, this was the day actually I got sick, in fact, but Luke and I...
From the stress of having to reach out to Renee.
Well, I was like, who's going to tell Renee? Because I feel bad, because we're only like 2 weeks out at this point. And so, but even that, we said, hey, I think instead of coming at this point, let's come in, they'll start here and make it big and epic intro. And you were like, hey, sounds good. Like, I'll make it happen. And it was just so cool. Like, there was never one moment where you were like, that I sensed. This could
not
be,
to our faces.
Not to our faces.
Ever
That you were frustrated and you were bitter and you were like, acting out on that. And so that's huge. And that's I would even use the word semi-rare with artists. Artists can typically sometimes be a little sensitive or very possessive of what they're owning and that kind of thing. So when they hear, hey, you need to change something, sometimes that's hard to hear, especially when you're 2 weeks out, right? And you got a full-time job and you're trying to figure out how this is going to work it to begin with. And so even that was kind of just a cool moment of teamwork and collaboration. So
it's got to be the Lord working on my heart, because 20 years ago I would have been like,
yeah, for sure.
Oh,
but no, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, so that's cool. And I feel like we should talk about the rehearsal.
Oh yeah, so that's yeah. So
gosh.
that was on our side. So
Yeah.
as you'll see in the film, we rented a projector for this project, and we've never worked. One of the ideas we've always had, kind of that we're like, oh, it'd be cool one day to do this, is a projector that's projecting on people. It's kind of at ground level, and it's projecting on like a wall or a screen, but in that there's people in front of it. And I think we've thought about it in the past with like one of our songs to do like a music video where it's just they're sitting on a bench and maybe there's something projecting on them. And so for this we were like, but it'd be awesome if like the projector was like huge, like it took up the whole auditorium.
Yeah, well, and part of Pastor Tim, our senior pastor here at Grace, when he pitched saying, hey, this is what I'm talking about, this is the heart of Easter this year for my message. Obviously it was the resurrection, but one thing that really jumped out at me is he said, God is still moving just as much today around, not just at Grace Church, but all across the nations, just as much today as he was 2,000 years ago, right? And that really jumped out at me, which we called this whole entire film piece Move for that very reason. But we wanted this idea of movement on top of movement. So like layers of movement. So you're seeing movement of nations of people worshiping, getting baptized, that kind of thing, on top of a dance, on top of a band that's just worshipfully playing. And it was just, it's so cool. And I get excited talking about it because it's a passion of mine, but like that was the idea, behind the whole thing. And we had we scheduled an audition on a Monday night for just a kind of a rehearsal. And we had kind of people, figure out what they're going to wear.
Yeah. Because all of this was new territory for us. We had enough an idea, but we also had a lot of questions because it was just a lot of new stuff for us. So we were like, it was probably smarter to have like a dress rehearsal and not put on. And that's partly learning from the past too, because last year we did a video and we walked away being like, man, it would have been awesome if we just had one night to rehearse and kind of get things, because it's a lot to set up everything, get everybody there, and then just capture all the shots and hope for the best. So we tried to create a little bit of margin to say, okay, do we need to change anything before the actual recording? Which luckily we did, because I think if we didn't, we would have. So this is just totally honest. So we do Monday night. So we have this huge projector. Yeah. So we were like, it'd be cool if the whole shoot, it's just white. Yeah. So it's just a white screen. Cammie, who's one of our artists, put together these fabrics, actually that we used last year. We put them all together and made this huge, I think it was like 40 by 40 or something feet fabric that is across the whole South OP auditorium. Yeah. And so everything's in front of it. And so we were like, since we have it, it'd be really cool to like, it's just doing white the whole time until we get to the end where the video starts and so
it gets big and epic and
so we had this great idea, and so we do that on Monday night, the dress rehearsal, and everybody's doing their thing and we're figuring stuff out, and Anderson puts together kind of like a little test reel, if you will, of the night. And I think me, Ezra, and Cody, and Chris. So Chris sent it to us three, Ezra and Cody and me. And I think all of us had the same idea of like, this looks really cheesy.
Like
this is not what we want.
It was actually the first time in this whole project, which is rare, I will say. It was the first time where I was like, oh no, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Like, what do we do with this?
Well, and ironically, I was thinking earlier that week, or like the week before, I was like, we haven't hit what we call kind of like the valley of suck in this project, which is ironic because there's usually a point in the project where you're like, what did we get ourselves into? This is not good.
Yeah.
And this is going to be horrible. And we hadn't felt that, which is very not normal for the projects we do. And it happened Tuesday morning when we were supposed to shoot that night. I was like, in my head, I was thinking, oh gosh, we've got to go explain to John, the guy kind of head of the finances at Grace Church. Like, we wasted a lot of money on a project that nobody's ever going to see.
I didn't know about this.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we had a minor freak out Tuesday
we had a
morning.
Freak out, and I still have the very first version from the rehearsal.
Yeah, and it was just too much light. It was too much, it was too big. Like, it just felt stale.
It felt stale, and like from a cinematographer perspective, like as we're filming, you're seeing all of our shadows. So you're seeing the people who's filming, you're seeing their shadows being cast, which is not what you want or anything like that. So we were just like, what are we going to do? So Luke texts us I think I might have sent it on.
I might have done it Monday night.
Yeah. And I might have sent it Monday night. And he texted us and said, hey, guys, we have an 11:30 meeting the next day. Can we please meet for, it can be 5 minutes, but we've got to figure something out here. So we meet, and we're like, you know what? So Ezra, who's our lighting specialist, put together an amazing, right?
Yeah, like he lit it all up.
Yeah,
it
was
beautiful.
spectacular. Made it beautiful. Everything was like in sync with the rhythm and the beats and all that. And so we talked, and we were like, well, what if we just killed the white light shining the whole time, and allow Ezra's lights to kind of be the featured lighting, and allow it to be more organic and natural, right?
Yeah.
And
just show that, because it was so beautiful that it was like we were even taking away from that.
We were
that
washing
wasn't
it out.
having the effect we wanted, the hits we wanted. And so that's where, once again, it's a community. You bring a team together, and you kind of brainstorm and say, okay. And I actually remember, kudos to my wife on this, because you sent it out Monday night, and I was like getting ready to fall asleep, and I'm watching it, and I was like, this is not good. And she's like, what's wrong? I was like, this is like cheesy. And so, but kudos to her, because she was like, you know what, though, you guys got a great team. You're going to figure it out. You guys will meet tomorrow, and like, you'll figure it out, and God will help you guys. And so I was like, I'm going to have to trust you. I'm taking your faith right now, because I don't have the faith in myself, or, you know.
We hit that valley quick. Like we
nosedived.
Yes, we did.
And you felt in those moments too, you feel bad, because you do have all these people putting in so much time and effort and love into something, and you're like, you want to present that well, and make them, look the best we can. It's not like in a selfish way, but just, you want to create something beautiful as you can. And so there was all those emotions. But that was the cool thing, is coming together as a team. And once again, for Renee hey, by the way, it's going to be dark now.
That was scary.
You to be okay with that. And was huge. And I think that just once again speaks to the team reference of, it really does take a team to be able to, and I think it takes a lot of trust too, because it's always nerve-wracking to have those moments. And I think one thing we've had to learn over the years as a staff team is, we all know we're good at what we do, or God's given us those gifts. And I think what can happen in those rooms is insecurity can rise, where it's, people don't think I'm good at what I'm doing.
For sure.
And we've had to learn, it's like, I know I can't edit a video. I know that, but I can watch it and say, hey, can we change this or that? But I'm never going to think, I could do Chris's job better than Chris, or I can do Cody's job better than Cody, or I can light up things like Ezra, and so on and so forth with everybody on the team. I possibly can dance like Renee, but no. Totally joking on that one. But it takes those moments to say, okay, let's bring our gifts and abilities together to the best of our ability, and what God's given us, and talk about how can we make this the best it can be. And I think when we get to that point, as artists in a church and creatives, is realizing we've all got gifts. We've all got things we're good at. We've all got things we're okay at that other people are better at. And it's like recognizing that, and then saying, okay, as a team, how do we encourage each other and sit in those rooms. Because I think that was a huge like growth point to me for even our staff team, was just to say, okay, let's sit in a room and talk about how we can make this better without anybody getting offended, because it's just we just want to make it the best it can be.
Well, and in that meeting that we had with us four, me, you, Cody, and Ezra, when we were like, oh no, this is not working, there was not one person that came into that meeting frustrated, angry, upset, wanting to kill the project. It was literally all of us problem solving, saying what can we do, to make this as successful as possible. And why was that in my heart, and I believe for all of our hearts, is that we believe that God put something on our heart that he wanted to convey. And just because there's one thing that didn't feel right doesn't mean you should kill a project altogether. And I would say that to any artist, is like, you're going to go through trial and error when anytime whether you're painting, whether you're dancing, whether you're doing filmmaking, whether, whatever form of art that is kind of your whatever you want to call it, you're always going to have those moments where it's just like, I feel stuck, but it doesn't mean you should give up. It doesn't mean you should. Sometimes it means you should pause. There's definitely those moments. Unfortunately, we didn't have that luxury in this situation. but
not for long, anyways.
No, exactly. We did not have long. But that's, again, I know I feel like a broken record saying this, but just kudos to our team for just rallying together and making it what it was.
Yeah, and bringing other people into it at those moments too. And I think that's what takes, confidence in your identity in Christ. And then the safety to bring somebody else in and say, this isn't what I can't get past this point for some reason. Can you help? And I know in a lot of our projects, we've all had those moments where it's just like, I cannot figure. And for me, in all honesty, the lighting was that for me. I was like, how do we not make this look cheesy? Because in my brain, it was like, there's no way. Like, this is not going well. And it was just as simple as taking the white out of the projector.
Crazy.
Like, that was it. And in my head, I was like, we've got to, trying to solve algebra or something. And it was just way too complicated. And then that's the kudos to Cody and Ezra, because they were the ones that was like, I think if we just take the screen out at the beginning, it will give what we're kind of looking for. And they were the ones that kind of first recommended that. And so, so that was awesome. And then kudos to Anderson too, because I think, after we got done filming, you go into the editing room and you're like,
let's see what
all right, magic happens.
And so, but once again, you sent out the first take and people kind of talked about it and, hey, what if we tried this? What if we tried that? And I think that takes a lot of courage to kind of sit in those rooms and a lot of trust to say, okay, once again, we're after the best thing. And you have to be careful too, because it's a lot of opinions. It's a lot of what ifs and things. Art's very opinionated. And so it's just kind of throwing those things out. But I think even in that, just getting feedback, like you kept making changes that you felt were the right ones. And I think it was kind of cool. And I don't know if you ever had this moment, but Ezra, Chris, me, and Cody, all at the one, I did the last one you sent out. We all said, if something just happened where it was like the others were good, and it was like, that'd be like showable.
You could show it.
And it'd be great.
Happy.
But then it was like the last one, it was like, because the hard thing that you have to do is capture what's going on in that room and that feeling. Capturing that via video. And that's not easy. That's not an easy thing, especially with bigger scenes. And so we were kind of all after that. And you're being kind to us. I'll say for myself, I have no idea how to speak in video terms. So I'm like, I just don't feel good.
It's like, okay, I received that. Good. A little more direction.
And but you just kept chipping away, and then there was, I think it was one of the obviously the last one you sent out, and it was. We all were like, this is it. Like we don't know what it is. We don't even know exactly what you changed, because by the end it was so minute of the changes, but just something about it captured the feeling of that room and Renee's dance, because that's what we wanted to honor a lot, was just your dance and how do we make that come across well. And we felt like it was just, like this is the one. And so,
And I'd be curious, Renee, kind of, sorry, I want to bring you back into the conversation a little bit. I know we talked a lot about the behind the scenes, but I would love to hear your heart and I don't know if we've ever really talked about this directly, which is so weird that I'm thinking about it, but why do you feel, or what purpose and importance does dance have in the Christian world, specifically the capital C church? Like, why is dance important, and what does it convey that other outlets of arts may not be able to convey?
Mm-hmm. I think it provides a physical component in terms of the countenance of the dancer, the smiles, the pain, the agony, all of the things, all of the emotions, and then the movement, of course. And, body language is one of the best ways to communicate. There are no words, but you can tell how a person is thinking or feeling just from their body language. And also, you look at the Old Testament and the New Testament, and David danced before the ark. And that was, I believe, not only joy and excitement, but reverence. And dance can really present an element of reverence that we can lose in the church.
That's really good.
And also Miriam danced, after the Red Sea had been parted. And so does that kind of answer your question?
No, absolutely. Because I think it serves a huge purpose. And I love, one of the things that I noticed that is so minute, but when people watch film a lot of times that aren't in the film world, if something feels off, they know it in their heart, but in their mind, they don't know why. They can't put their finger on saying, that's off because of this. One thing
like our conversations.
Yes. Case in point, Exhibit A.
I'm your normal person. I'm like, I don't know what it is. It just doesn't
feel
right. That's right. But one of the things I was so impressed with your dancing, and you kind of alluded to this, is your facial expressions. That's one thing I genuinely, throughout the whole process of working with you and seeing your dances and like your renditions and your versions and what you were developing, I never thought about the facial expressions until I started editing it. And I noticed there were moments when you were smiling. There were moments when there was more agony. There were moments where your facial expressions conveyed a specific emotion that if you were just stoic the whole time or had the same, that I think the audience, for lack of better terms, would have maybe watched it and said, man, something doesn't feel right, or there's something I'm missing, and they don't even know they're missing it, right? It's the little nuances in the arts world that can make a huge difference that people like yourself as a professional dancer, you think about, but for me, never crossed my mind until I started editing, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's smiling at this point. Like that conveys so much power, like in what she's doing in the song moments and all that. So, and then the last thing I'll say, and unless we want to talk about more, because I can talk all day, is one of the things we were struggling with on the night of the rehearsal was everyone was practiced, everyone was ready, everyone was, from an orchestra band perspective. But it felt like, at the beginning especially, I think we were trying to find ourselves a little bit. So you weren't even in the picture at this point. We said, band, let's just do some run-throughs. I'm going to do some practice shots. I'm going to feel my way through this. And we just weren't quite getting to where we wanted to be energy-wise. And then lo and behold,
this was cool.
Was cool. Lo and behold, I remember we said, okay, Renee, let's do it a full take now when you're dancing. And something clicked that the band just came alive. Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the element that we were missing. And now that it's here, oh my gosh, now the drummers are feeling it. Now the trumpets feeling it. Now the saxophone's feeling it. Now the keys are feeling. And like, there's just that level of energy that you brought, which was super cool, that we were like, we literally, we said afterwards, we had a great band and everything. We were like, oh, thank goodness when Renee came in, like they came alive a little bit more. So,
but I think that's a good representation of just like, I would say that in like the spiritual sense is like something broke in the room. Like there was just something that broke open that wasn't there. And I think that's just, I don't want to over spiritualize anything by any means, but I think that is a representation of what dance can do. it can break open a room because worship is very physical. I think we don't talk about it in the American church too much. I don't think, but I do think historically it's a very physical action. And so when somebody does have the courage to break loose a little bit or come in and just like dance, I think that does free people. There's just something that God has made us that when we see that, it's like when you see somebody raise their hands in a room, there's a freedom that comes. There's two things probably. There's a self condemnation that can happen of like, oh, I'm not that spiritual, or there's a freedom that comes. And I think the freedom is from the Lord saying, hey, it's okay to get into this, to enjoy it, to immerse in the art of it. And I think you brought that. And so in that, people saw that, and it was like, oh, like there's just this freedom to like get into it, which was amazing. And we seriously were. And, sometimes it just takes time for people to warm up and stuff like that. And so I think with the band, that was probably part of it. Because there's a lot of, there's a level of, we showed everybody the video and what was going on, but there's a level of you don't get it because you're not the one creating it. And so there's a level of them. But I think when they saw you, it was that like, oh, this is what's happening.
The vision was more clear.
Sure. And in that too, just the freedom of like, oh, well, she's going all out, like And so kudos to you to bring that energy and that excitement, because I think it to Chris's point, you just felt a change in the room. Spiritually, I would say, and just the band really got it, and I think if you wouldn't have been as bold or as brave to come out there and just do it and do your thing, because that takes bravery in its own regard, because once again, we haven't dove into this world too much as Grace Church recently, at least, and so for you to bring this kind of element of arts that we don't do a whole lot in the first place takes bravery, but then to just show up and be like, all right, here we go. Like that was huge, but I think it broke the room in a lot of ways and changed the atmosphere a lot, and it was just really, really beautiful to watch. And I think a representation of what dance and movement and worship can do to just free a room, in all honesty.
That's good.
So I loved it.
Absolutely.
It was so fun to do. It felt like such a gift from God. There's been so many times in the past 10 years where I've been tempted to throw in the towel with dance because, as you get older, you can't do it as well, just like with a professional athlete. Sure. And it's frustrating, too. Oh, my leg used to go so much higher. I used to be able to hold it so much longer. I used to jump higher, whatever. My feet are flat. They're not pointing anymore, and I see all that and I feel all that. And it's just, there's not much I can do about it. And it's very frustrating. Sure. But God, he just came in and used your invitation to allow me to dance. And, no matter where I'm at in my journey with dance. And it was like him saying, see, I can still use you. And then it was a blast on top of that. So
it was fun. Yeah, it was a great team. And absolutely. So.
Absolutely. Well, Renee, thank you so much for being with us today on the podcast and just joining us and kind of giving us a little insight. Anything else you want to say before we're done?
I'm good to go. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome just to hear your heart and just your desire behind it all, and just God using it, and it's just pretty cool to be a part of, honestly. Absolutely. And just to watch. And
such a blessing.
And I mean, I didn't know if I was going to say this, but you actually came up with a new nickname for Chris throughout this process.
Don't say it.
I did? I thought Anderberg is your nickname, though.
It is now.
Yeah, it is now because of you.
Because of you.
Oh, you didn't know?
No, I thought that was already established.
I can't remember.
A new thing.
I can't even remember what happened, but we were in a meeting, and she was like, Grace Church's Steven Spielberg, and somebody was like, yeah, we call him Anderberg or something.
Yes.
So you've just been calling him that ever since then.
Yeah, literally.
I know, every text.
So every text, I just giggle by myself.
Yep. Thanks for that.
Yes. Now give me a nickname.
Thanks for that. Oh my gosh.
And I'll say this last thing is
thanks for joining us today, guys. We're just kidding.
If you want to know the culture of grace and the relationship dynamic between Luke and I, that was it right there.
It's entertainment in and of itself.
if you're listening to this is coming out on April 1st, 2023. If you are listening to this, we want to invite you out to Grace Church, whether it's online campus or in one of our in-person campuses. You can go to visitgracechurch.com/Easter to learn more. If you want to see the film, it's going to open the service and kind of open with very celebratory, because we have a lot to celebrate. Jesus is risen, absolutely. Right? And if not, then we will, if you can't make it, we will put a link in the description after Easter, so you can check it out there as well. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Or just go to the GC Collaborative YouTube channel,
even better.
Which if you just type in GC Collaborative in YouTube, it'll pop right up. It'll be on there as well.
Yeah.
It'll be labeled Move, I'm guessing.
Move.
Or Easter 2023.
Yep.
You guys can check it out. And it really is, it is beautiful. And we're just, everybody who was a part of it, from the band to Renee to Cammie to Ezra and Cody and all the behind the scenes. Thank you guys, because it really, I'll end with this. I think it's just really awesome for me, in my opinion, to be a part of projects like this, because it's so much bigger than what one person can create. Yeah. And when you have people like Renee, where it's like, we just want to dance. I don't know what that means. We just want it. And then she takes her skills and abilities and makes something beautiful, to Cody and Ezra and the band saying, hey, we just want this. And they just take it in their skill set and make it something beautiful. Mm-hmm. It's just really powerful to be a part of, and you just realize how much you need community and a team to create, and just life in general. So thank you so much, Renee, for being here. It was a fun conversation and a privilege, and thank you guys for listening, and we will see you / hear you next time.
Wow, so that was really good. Thank you, Renee, for being a part of that. That was awesome. Luke, anything that jumped out to you?
Oh, it's just awesome. Once again, we talked about it in the podcast, obviously, but just her heart, and just there's a lot of patience, and I'm sure she was probably pretty frustrated with us at times throughout the years. And so, but just to see, but I think that's just cool to see God moving in her life, and really her just trusting that, and that even for me is like, it's not on us to always be perfect and know everything and do everything right.
And one thing that we did talk about, like even after we stopped recording, was just the care and of caring for the artist first before their giftings, instead of their giftings before the artist, right? And so that's something that I know she appreciates, and it's something that at Grace Church we thrive to accomplish. And so
try our best.
We try our best.
Probably have made a few mistakes.
We've made a few mistakes, but if you're an artist listening to this, you work at a church or you work in the secular world, I think that's super important, especially to prevent burnout and keep people healthy. So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, once again, Easter is coming up, so I know a lot of our listeners are part of the worship teams at our campuses. So we just want to say we're so thankful for you guys, and always just so thankful for the amount of time and love and effort you guys put into things. And it's just always beautiful to see everything come together, and just everybody just be so passionate about their roles. It really makes beautiful times of worship for our community to come together and just put our eyes on Jesus and worship him. So thank you guys for all you're about to do. And we love you so much. And as always, we always end with, if you can, on Planning Center, just accept or decline. There's nothing worse than a yellow question mark for weeks at a time. I was trying to rhyme. It just keeps going.
Cute.
Yeah, it's kind of cute. You kind of like it. I kind of like it. But anyways, in all seriousness, it really does help, because I always say this. It's not even for our benefit. It's for your benefit, because if you're the person on the other end of it where somebody's not accepting or declining, and then you do it last minute, we have to reach out to somebody else, and they have to kind of drop their plans. And obviously we do that every once in a while. We have a great team that is very gracious and willing to help, but we try to stay away from that as much as possible. So accept or decline, that is fine. But if you leave a question mark, we might not have time. I don't even want to end there. We can't end with that. We got to do something else. Anyways, we love you guys in all seriousness. Happy Easter, and we will see you on you'll hear from us on May 1st. I don't know ever how to say that. I'm so sorry. It's all good, man. That's the second time in one podcast, but love you guys.
Thanks for listening to the GC Collaborative Podcast. If you have any questions or would like more information, check us out at visitgracechurch.com.